Jason, I was really, really touched by the video that you did a couple days ago on the detriment, not detriment, but the dynamics of openness. The dynamics of openness in empathy that leans toward absorbing the energy and the energy of another. And then on top of that, and I don't think you said this specifically, but this has been my experience, the tendency towards drawing more intently upon the threads that feed underlying habits of self-criticism and judgment.
Mm.
And there's empathizing with someone and taking on excitement, and then there's empathizing with someone and taking on judgment. And when I take on judgment, the burden is much heavier, weighs much harder, and lays me out for longer than the exhilaration I get from taking on enthusiasm. The setback of absorbing judgment seems to last longer than the absorbing of excitement. Your openness and your vulnerability and your not only that, just generally your expression of what the fuck was going on and what you were experiencing was really refreshing, and I appreciate you sharing that with the world.
Well, I appreciate your feedback. I know that I have been going through the trials and tribulations of divesting myself of a company, and it's not easy. I mean, as much as I can try to plan things, there's going to be so much that's going on that I can't control, and a lot of that has to do with people, just people. I care about a lot of people when it comes to that business. Like, I mean, they're the employees and they're the clients, and the clients' families are also there, and business partners, and that's a lot of people to, number one, try to make, if happy is not quite the right word, it's certainly alleviating whatever fears they may have on a transition, such that they're not going to be left in the cold when some new people take over. There's that, but also thinking about all these other people instead of myself. It's hard to know. It's like, who do you watch out for? And if you have 1,000 other people or whatever it ends up being, that you're having to consider, it's like, where do you fall in that? And so that's kind of the difficulty, is making all of these other people, the different stakeholders will have different desires, and there are lots of conflicts in those desires too. I mean, I can't make one group of people extremely happy, and that doesn't necessarily make the other group happy. So I figured, a lot of the stuff that we're posting is, we're sharing information and things that we know, or things that we're learning and all that kind of stuff. But we're not perfect.
No, there's no perfect. And that's part of it, is showing all sides of it, because people that are going through what you're going through it's hard. It can be hard. It can be really trying. It can be really draining, and it can really call to question you. Brandy is calling. Give me one moment. Hey, baby.
Hi, what are you doing?
I am currently on a video recording with Jason. We're doing his daily podcast together this time.
Ah.
So I'm using my new ring light, so I actually don't look so dark and foreboding in our YouTube videos, which I don't think you've seen any of them yet, right? Yeah. Hopefully this one will look better.
Right on. Okay. Well, I say hi. I'm going to bed. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you, you look happy. Are you stoned? You're stoned.
I was a while ago. I will be again here shortly. I'm currently in the midst of conversation and looking after our kitties.
The babies.
The babies.
Are they there too?
Yeah, they are. Oni won't leave me alone. He is on my lap.
See, he doesn't like
all
it
the
when
time.
we're gone. He does not like it when we're gone.
No.
Okay, I'm going to bed. I'll
All
talk
right.
to you later.
Love you, babe.
Okay,
Take care.
bye.
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 All right.
Talk about real world.
Yeah. In the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where the hell were we?
Yeah. Showing how the sausage is made.
Yeah. This is interesting, right? You know, like I've been in other companies before and been in a variety of positions. One where, you know, the .com bubble burst and, you know, having the company crumble around us, you know, after 9/11 and kind of going through the throes of that kind of drama. But I've never been the ultimate guy until this business, you know, where I'm, for lack of a better term, CEO, you know, I mean, small company, but still. And if there's a problem, especially in this transition, I have to solve it. I'm it. The buck does stop here. And it's so interesting. You just don't know what you can't, there's no book. There's no class. How do you divest the company, you know, with grace? Like, sounds like a great title, but I don't know if anybody wrote that book, if that would really help that much.
I think it's a hard book to write because there's no happy ending for everyone. I mean, good God, there's so many nuances, situation by situation. Maybe that's part of why there's no book as well, because of the nuanced nature of it. But,
yeah, I mean, there's security. It's like, what do people value, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do they value security? Do they, you know, this consistency of a job that they won't have to go look for a new job? Do they, you know, they've invested. Let's say it's the staff, and they've invested in a relationship with, you know, me and the other leadership, and that's not something that you can hand off to a new group of owners. Like, they don't have the history. That's not something that you keep track of. Right? You might have documentation on how the you know, how they performed or whatever, and kind of my interpretation of that, or the people who were in charge of doing those performance reviews, that translates, but not all the time you've invested in those relationships. So I can see how that's scary, you know, and I also have an owner's perspective. So when I'm handing off information, you know, about the staff to the new owners, there's also that too. It's like, you have to keep in mind who it is that you're communicating with and what their actual needs are. Because I don't want to tell them things that aren't true necessarily, but I also don't want to, I mean, getting to this point, you don't want to share too much information because you don't want to scare people away.
Yeah. And yet if you're really judgmental, it's really easy to get lost in the judgment of separation. Allow me to paint a different vignette. The other opportunity with acquisition by another bigger company is the ability for upward mobility. with
Yep.
my company and our size as we were, where I was at, the people that worked under me, their level of upward mobility was really more responsibility, not so much title. And that responsibility came with constraints of the available resources of the company, insofar as the resources we had with respect to the customer requirements management software we could afford to have in place, with regards to the engineering equipment that we had in place, with regards to the cost per laptop that we could provide for each individual. While in judgment, I could see down this path of negative separation from those who were now left to fend for themselves in this new company. What I found in retrospect, having seen how different people evolve or thrive in that environment, is there is opportunity for individuals to have pathways that they didn't have before, job security they didn't have before. There's opportunities, but what I found in my experience was that I didn't readily relate to those opportunities. I readily related to the guilt of leaving. And those are two very different things. And that's part of the deep nuance of this. There's also, and I'd like to ask this question. So I ask this from experience, because there's the idea of what you want to create, and then there's the recognition that it's been created, and there are others that are subsisting off of it, or subsisting within it, or thriving within it, or being within it, or being within your orbit. At what point did you recognize that it was all on you, and you had these other individuals looking to you for answers? Because my experience was, it wasn't the day I hired them. There was a significant delay before I realized what I had created, before I realized the position that I was in, before I realized the magnitude of decision that was involved in in the situation I put myself in. And so I guess the question for you is, at what point did you recognize that? Was it right away? And how did that change from textbook to reality?
Yeah, I think there are probably a few answers to this. I started this company from zero. I mean, we even, of course, transforming a building into a building that that could house this business type was a long proposition, and the general contractor I had hired to lead that endeavor fucked things up royally, and I had to take over. So it's like early on, I realized that a lot of this could just dash on the rocks before it ever gets started, or I have to figure out a way to solve these problems. Even when you hire people that you think are the experts that know more than you, that's still, it's on you. So there's that. Also, because this was a business in the medical field, or tangentially related anyway, the whole 2 years of COVID was also another, trial by fire, where I had people quitting left and right for no reason at all. I mean, other than fear or whatever. And so there was this, responsibility on my shoulders, even before anything locked down in our city. To look at, it was like something happened in China, and then people are dying in Italy, and me going, oh my God, this is something that could affect everybody around the world, and trying to jump on that and teach people some stuff that they certainly didn't want to hear. um, and then navigating all those fears along the way. You know, that's the point where I really understood how much of I don't think cheerleader is the right is the right word. But it's, and even motivator isn't the right word. There was
gravitational force.
Yeah.
You're a gravitational force that can be used for multiple.
Yeah. I had to project like confidence in when you know, the whole reason I was putting initiatives in place was because I knew this was going to be a big problem. So it's kind of interesting that, you know, my emotional state of how I presented in front of the team was by and large the real reason we made it through with flying colors compared to a lot of our competitors. And that type of leadership I didn't quite understand until that, you know, until I had to step up. And it was a lot of fuddling through. Yeah. You know, it's a service-based business too, and so the clients are, you know, I can give details. It doesn't really matter. You know, caring for the elderly, and you know, they can't help themselves, and so like this is a business of compassion as well as a lot of complicated parts, and so like if you're we come back to the empathy issue. It's like sometimes I have to make decisions that might at first seem like they could be considered cold, whether that's to the staff or to the families or you know, the clients, that type of stuff. But for the greater good, you know, and COVID's a perfect example of that, where we had to make a lot of decisions on how much people could visit, or they can't leave the building, or, you know, all of those types of things that people did not like. They did not like. And there were some who were, you know, vociferous in their complaints and constant, you know, because they felt we were trampling on their rights, you know, but I had to think of everybody. And not, I mean, my staff's kids. Like, you know, right? It's like I can't control all that either. That's another aspect of it too. So I think those are the two. Yeah.
Sorry, that's a major transition too. You talk about the contractors that help to get the place ready for what it needed to be. The level of care you expect from contractors is very different from the level of care and the level of connection that you get with people that actually work for you. And that's the realization that was a major switch flip for me, which is the realization that I went down a path for my dream, and all of a sudden I had other people's dreams wrapped in with me.
Mm-hmm.
The weight of that is, you can read it, you can read about it, you can hear people talk about it, but then there's being there. And then there's what your own mind and your own cogitation does with that information and with that being in that position. And it's there's you don't know how you do until you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure you ran into this on a number of occasions where you hire an employee, they aren't right for the position. So that means I did a poor job of vetting in the first place, and taking on that burden, thinking, okay, well, it's not necessarily their fault, it's my fault. Is there another position I can put them in, or is there training I can give them, or is there mentoring that they need? And this kind of taking a long tail to get to the same conclusion that this is the wrong person for this job, and just recognizing that they're better served by letting them go where they could find a job that's more appropriate for them, where they might have more upward mobility and a better experience and happiness because they're making good on the responsibilities of that job, and like taking way too long to make that decision. They're hurt. They hurt. They feel it. They know they're not living up to expectations. You know it, and yet I thought I was doing good by trying to keep them around and maybe figuring out if they could fit into the round hole, and they were a square peg.
Yeah, that's another one that you can read about, but until you're faced with that individual where, especially if there's something about that individual where you really want them to succeed and you really think there's an opportunity for them to be benefited by the culture and the experience, but it legitimately just isn't a fit. It's not a fit. Like that happens. There are situations where it's not a fit. That's hard. And what I mean by it's hard is there is a right answer. There is a right thing to do, but coming to that conclusion on your own, even having read about it, even talking to people who've been through it and hearing their advice, living it is different, more impactful. It's hard because what you go through as an individual to understand what has been understood by people older and more experienced than myself for a long time, centuries. It's a journey. It's hard as an individual in the arena.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no. And it's funny. There are these little cliches or these pithy statements like, be slow to hire and quick to fire. I think that's one of them, right? And now on the backside of that, I understand it. But when it's told to you up front, you're like, okay.
Do I apply that now with this individual that I think could thrive, but is just not really finding their pace?
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do apply it in that situation. Yeah.
I think one of the other difficulties, sometimes there are people on a team that can't work together, and you need them to work together to have an effective result. And so it's like these 2 people or 5 people or whatever it is, right? Where there's just, they talk past each other. There's conflict. Their personalities rub each other the wrong way. One person thinks the other person is being high-minded or superior or, all that kind of stuff. It's like, given different teams, those 2 people could do an amazing job. But in this setting, with the people that I have, a change needs to be made. And that's hard too, because it's not really any one person's fault. And so you have to figure out, well, what is the change? I mean, maybe you do discern that one of those people is not the best team player or something, and that's the choice that you have to make. But that's also hard too, because if you could all put yourself in other people's shoes, that's where that kind of compassion turns to ruinous empathy, where you're like, well, I would hate to be in this position myself. I could see how that would suck. So, wow, I don't want to lose my job if I was in that position. And that puts up the wall of decision of, trying to make a choice. Like, something needs to be made. And it's like, I'm just going to push that off the next week. And then next week becomes,
and that's it. And in that time, things fester. There are these radiating effects, these radiating negative effects of the unaddressed situation, the unaddressed conflict between those two individuals.
Yeah.
And knowing that while the hard conversation is hard, and I don't say hard for the fun of it, it's fucking hard. It's less detrimental and painful than those negative emanations that occur over time. What I found through doing it the wrong way is that festering is way worse for not only for you, for fucking everyone that sees it. And everyone sees it.
That's true. You think
everyone fucking sees it. That's worse. That's hard.
It is. Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah, and that is like, God, it's so funny when I think back to when I was much younger, and was moving up the ranks in whatever company I was at. I was not putting energy into learning about leadership, even though I wanted those positions. I was, and looking back now, I'm like, well, when I didn't get those positions, that was the right move. Like I'm got lucky that I didn't get put into those higher positions. Sometimes, there were a couple times where I did get promoted, and I was running teams, and I still didn't recognize, because they were so technically minded jobs, that I didn't really think what they call soft skills. Now the soft skills are fucking hard.
They're not soft.
Yeah, no, you have to work on all of your own limiting beliefs, all of your fears, all of your, if you're worrying about the judgment of others, or like feeling like a fake, like all of that stuff. I'm not talking about necessarily going to therapy, but I'm talking, like it's so strange. It wasn't until I got older and really decided that I needed to work on myself. We talk about personal development, and that it's not quite self-help, right? It's more development in the way of leadership, and that means getting your ego out of the fucking way.
Mm-hmm. I will say that's a blessing of the empathy, though, insofar as the second order. And what I mean by second order is the ability to see in the other the impact of yourself, because you can empathize with how the other sees yourself. There's this weird thing that you can do where you can see yourself through the other's eyes, and maybe it's fabricated, but my experience in putting myself in that position is when I'm being fake, I see myself as being fake. When I am not speaking the truth of what I believe, or I'm speaking something other than I believe, I see that in myself coming through the other individual as I'm experiencing it. And in that, there's an opportunity with a level of empathy and openness to be to feel the negative feedback of your own faulty handling of the situation. I don't know how else to say it, but kind of, lack of authenticity. There's the opportunity to see the impact of inauthenticity, and through that, learn these hard lessons in a really, deranged is a harsh word, but maybe not ironic, maybe not sadistic. Learning the negative impact of your own inauthenticity through observing your own inauthenticity through someone else's eyes as you're delivering inauthenticity.
That's talk about one of those mirrors where two mirrors are next to each other, and you're like seeing the multiple reflections through the thing back and forth. Yeah, that's what that feels like to me.
Yeah,
very disorienting. Yeah. Because you can be in the middle of a conversation where you're having that experience, kind of, watching yourself from behind as you're talking, seeing the reflection on the person's face and thinking, what the fuck am I doing? Your mouth is still going.
Yep.
Yeah. This is something that I noticed recently too. So in this company, there are two main principals, right? We'll just say owners, and me and another guy. And I have noticed that his interpretation of information that he's getting is different from my interpretation from people when people are communicating, even when we're both in the room together. Now, it's even more different when other people, employees, are communicating information to me and then communicating information
separately
to him about the same topic. So I certainly believe that it's our interpretations which are causing part of that distance. But I also believe that the employees themselves communicate differently to him versus me. I usually come to my conversations with the employees. I try to hold them up to, I have high expectations for them, but I also have a lot of praise around, when they're doing things well. And those things are very specific. Like, I try to be very specific when I'm giving praise, or when I'm, having to talk about something that needs to be better. So I try to hold them up to, like, I see the best in you. I know that you can live up into this, these goals or responsibilities or that kind of stuff. His conversations are more emotion based. So it's more of a, I understand you kind of conversation. But so they end up sharing a lot of, like, their fears with him around things. Whereas I think they don't want me to see them. The employees don't want me to see them as less than. They want my approval in that sense. And so we can have these weird, totally different experiences about the same topic. And I honestly, I don't know what to make of that necessarily. It's like, I don't think I'm going to, I keep thinking about it. It's like, am I doing something wrong? Am I putting too much pressure on people? Is he putting too little? I don't know. I don't know the answer to this. I'm trying to learn from this, what I've noticed, especially in the last few months, because it's been more acute.
Yeah, that's a hard one, especially if your inclination is to go to self-judgment and self-criticism, which how do I say this? I want to say I don't think it's bad, but it can be bad. It actually can be. But there's value in being open to things being different. But what I also recognize is different individuals draw different perspectives from others. And what I mean by that is, if there is an inclination of another person to want to be liked, or want to seek approval from the individual, and one individual is keen towards negativity and another individual is keen toward positivity, types of conversations that would be had are very different. And the individual having the conversation is in the same tough position of wanting to keep their job and wanting to look after their family and wanting to be having their own goals and aspirations. But if they find themselves having to cater to two different personalities, they'll cater to those two different personalities differently.
Yeah.
And I think there's value in trying to find objective information about how others interpret what you're saying and the vision that you're trying to present. But there's also, it's important to recognize the instigator, the individual that's instigating the response. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I will. I mean, I try to be efficient in my conversations too. So if I'm needing to discuss, 5 things, and I'm going to give some action items, and I'm going to, give some idea of when I'm going to need some results, and that kind of thing, right? Pretty standard, it seems. And my business partner he's trying to solve problems that are arising as they're arising, right? So I think I have a little bit more of a future focus, like let's shoot towards this change in the business, and he's just trying to keep fires from burning things down. And both of those skills are necessary, because there often are fires that need to be dealt with immediately with very quick action. And not to say that I can't make quick decisions. It's just, I think his radar is like hyper tuned for that type of scenario. And sometimes I think that they're not truly fires, nor is anything smoldering. But when some employees who may lean towards the dramatic in general in their lives, he's gonna almost like he's feeding into that energy, and so things get blown out of proportion that aren't, like, I would never see. No one would ever come to me with that stuff as a problem.
Yeah. Certain individuals can be amplifiers. Yeah.
Although my behavior may also make it so that I don't see certain things that are actually brewing too. So I try to look at it from that standpoint. Like, I mean, it's good to have partners with some different, or leaders with some different personalities, right? Because you do get a broader perspective.
Sure enough.
Yeah. Of course, I always try to find the good in everything. So there's that.
Well, speaking of amplifiers, so I've got a little bit of good news, wisdom to share in past experience. I also have just general good vibes to share in the form of sitar. Do you want to hear a little sitar jam?
Why not?
All right, why not?
That's right. A little sitar interlude is always a good thing.
Right? Why not?
Have you earned some sort of Indian moniker?
Like, oh God, no.
From your teacher? No, not quite yet. Yeah.
No, people playing the sitar is like playing the violin. No one gives you accolades unless you're in a philharmonic orchestra. So until then, I'm just a tinkerer. No.
Does it pay to have large hands to play the sitar?
Oh, probably. I imagine so. The finger stretches are pretty long.
Yeah. So let's say if Shaquille O'Neal was given a violin and a sitar, probably the sitar is the better choice.
he's taking the sitar. Oh, it's still in tune. The tuning of the sitar is a regular care and maintenance. That's a labor of love. All right, Melo's short sitar interlude.
Very nice. Very, very nice.
So nice. It's so nice. All right.
With the interesting week that I've had, it's good to hear. I know there's something really natural about the way a sitar sounds. Not all instruments are like that. I know that the cello is probably one of those for me too. Like somehow it's resonant with the human body, and I think the sitar is in there as well. You know, that it kind of feels organic.
Yep. I know exactly what you mean. It's one of my attractions to it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for watching the phenomenal future vomit for the day. Hopefully we had some good, useful stuff if you're going through troubles with staff or with partners or with, even if you're in a band, kind of your partners in a band. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So all those kind of things could hopefully apply to you, and, subscribe, follow, like, all those good things.
Jason, I like you.
Hey, Mark, I like you too. Peace.
That's a great way to end it.
Okay. Sounds good. Hit the stop. Stop that recording.
Do I have to?
Yeah.
Okay.